Okay, hi, welcome. This is Ben Affleck, director, one of the writers, and an actor in this movie, The Town. I'm doing the commentary. We desaturated the Warner's and the Legendary logos here a little bit, just to try to make it feel a little bit more in keeping color-wise with the movie and with the tone of the movie. It's just me, there's no one else, so if that is a great disappointment or going to bore you, you can save you some time and you can just go back to watching the movie. But I am in Tulsa shooting a movie, and I was the only person that we couldn't get it any other way. This text we went over quite a bit, trying to find a way that just encapsulated kind of what it was about Charlestown that made it unique, and what the relationship was to Boston and to bank robbery. And this is something that somebody told me directly, and I used here. And this is the quote from Chuck Hogan's excellent book on which this movie's based. I saw it in the foreword of the book and just thought it made me want to do the movie. It so perfectly captured Boston and Charlestown and the whole thing. This is the Bunker Hill Monument, of course, erected to memorialize those who fought and died in the Revolutionary War against the British in Bunker Hill, and is now, part of the neighborhood of Charlestown. And this kind of shows the relationship between Charlestown and Greater Boston. Driver's name is Arthur Shea, former Medford police officer, 57 years old. As soon as his partner leaves with the coal bag, out he cracks a Herald, and he don't look up till the guy gets back. Now we're in Harvard Square. The robbery in the book was set in Kenmore Square, a bank in Kenmore Square, and I switched it to Cambridge and Harvard Square, not just because I'm from Cambridge, but because there was a big armored truck robbery and shootout there in the 90s, and I wanted to try to root the stuff in things that were realistic. This little piece was actually pulled from something later in the movie and repurposed and put here at the beginning at the suggestion of one of the editors, Chris Rouse, and it worked really, really well. So this is our car guy there. And so we had to use a stunt guy to do this long bit chick, and so I was worried that he wouldn't be, very good at acting natural or real. But he was great. Now here I use the security cameras because I think that the only way that we kind of are used to seeing real robberies or crimes are on these, through security camera footage. YouTube, 15 frames per second, black and white kind of a thing. I thought that if you saw that, it would help the audience contextualize what was happening and make it feel more immediate. You can see, and then reprised it here, also trying to help establish the geography. I thought him, getting people's Blackberries right away was an interesting thing. It's just nowadays, it's a lot more than hands in the air. Everyone's got a phone or a device that could immediately call for help. So that'd be the first thing that they would go for. You see a die pack, which is one of the details that we picked up and put into the movie. This is Victor Garber, the great Victor Garber. And he did me a favor and did 2 days on the movie, and the other day was a scene where he had a bunch of dialogue, and that scene ultimately got cut out, so it makes him look like he has a very random, weird part as a guy who gets thrown to the ground. And in fact, he did a lovely job for us in another scene as well. Just couldn't keep it in the movie. And I wanted the movie to go really fast and chaotic and noisy, and all the way in the robbery into this time waiting for the time lock to open, and have it be quiet and kind of eerie and still.
No distress code. Open it clean. Don't stop!
The safe here is actually the same one that was used, the same model that was used in Friends of Eddie Coyle, the Robert Mitchum movie, and that movie was a bit of an inspiration for me in terms of finding my way into this movie.
Take your time, okay? Breathe.
It was hard to get a sense of which actors were who in these masks, and so it's one of the reasons why I repurposed that scene in the van and put it earlier, so that you have an idea of who these guys are.
Hey, get back! Yeah, all right.
And then the idea was for it to pick up its kind of manic pace. You hear the score kicks in. Here's an example of these effects shots that you don't know are effects shots, where we're just having the little images disappear off the security monitor was done, in an effects house because we couldn't do it live. I also liked the idea from the book of nuking security drives. There was a lot of debate about whether or not that would actually erase the data, but I thought, it worked pretty well. If it didn't erase the data, people probably wouldn't check.
Hey, you guys open?
You can see here there's a blue quality to the light, and it's because we shot tungsten film stock, and while there were tungsten lights in there, you know, a lot of natural daylight was coming in through the windows, and so it cast a very sort of blue. Daylight looks blue on film that's designed to shoot interiors with lights, and so it had a combination of the two lights, and I think it produced a nice effect. Robert Elswit did a great job with this movie.
What? Huh? What'd you say? Nobody did anything.
It's poor Victor's only lines in the movie now, and then he has this ignominious end to his time in the movie.
Easy. That's enough.
And that we shot at very high speed so that the audience could sort of see what it is. It's still, I think, a little bit blurry. I really liked the idea when I read the book of these guys who use bleach to corrupt DNA and clothing fibers and prevent cops from, you know, catching them that way. I thought it showed like a kind of interesting awareness of how they actually solve these crimes, which is usually by DNA evidence, and an interesting, unique way of preventing it. So it's one of the things I really dug.
Cops get us well in, we're gonna need them.
While we were filming that scene, I walked back into the bank there to start with my mask and gun on, and alarmed the customers and management of the bank. So they asked us to please not come back into the inside. It's the first time, you know, you see kind of Renner and his character, and I think he does a good job of pulling you in. This is Dale Boulevard in South Boston, and if you stand there, the airplanes will come overhead. It's part of the approach of the airlines over the kind of bay, and I thought it was sort of being eerie, you know, way for that whole manic, you know, trauma of the robbery to end out there with, you know, hearing seagulls and standing on the beach and not knowing where you were.
What's up? Most of the city work van.
Titus Welliver, who was in Gone Baby Gone, played the uncle, Lionel.
Too busy working. Use the van to screen the door. Bleach the entire place for DNA. Kills all the clothing fibers so we can't get a match. Silent Bell came from cage number 2. Assistant managers at Beth Israel.
This is John's introduction here, and you know, I like that he was sort of laconic on the one hand, but also seemed like he had a lot of authority and history, it felt like, on the job.
Found the dye packs and the tracers. Found the van. Torched.
Where is it?
What do you think?
So did a nice job. We had some cameras hidden down there by the van that was smoking, and so we were able to get this shot as well, and that shot as well as the helicopter shots at the same time. So this is a new scene, or a scene that was cut, where I wanted to try to show how insular Charlestown was and how it was famous for not talking to the police, and it had this code of silence. I also liked how the bridge looked behind these guys at the end of the Steadicam shot. It also establishes that Dino is from Charlestown. He says, you know, it's all the love I get makes the homecoming feel so warm. Ultimately, it was just one of those things where, you know, you kind of got all this information somehow in other ways. And I felt you didn't need it because it slowed it down. But I liked the scene on its own merits, and so I included it. It's got kind of a funny line.
Anybody see who lit this van on fire?
That's Charlestown. That's right up by Old Sully's, the bar, and this is the skating rink. Although it's not a Boys and Girls Club, we put that sign up there. And we deliberately tried to make it look more kind of down than it really was. It's actually a really nice skating rink.
Where's Jim?
And ultimately, we ended up having to... this interior is actually very far from that exterior. This interior is in Dorchester, where Gone Baby Gone was set.
Hey, speak of the fucking devil.
Slane, who's also in Gone Baby Gone, is terrific in this movie, and you know, just has a real feel of he feels like the real thing.
So what? What's the matter? Let me see that thing.
Owen Burke as well as excellent. Dez, and he's from Charlestown, and you know, he just you get a lot, I feel, out of just you know, looking at him, seeing him be there. It feels like it kind of roots you in the world right away.
How the fuck you gonna handle this?
I'm gonna stalk her like a fucking ACOM. We'll find out.
Find out what?
If she needs to get scared.
Initially, this wasn't designed to be broken up. There's another thing that happened editorially later. You know, basically just wanted to kind of pace it up and add to a sense of jeopardy for her.
For all the violent crimes and robbery.
You know, wanted us to feel like there was a legitimate danger posed by these guys, as well as, you know, to sort of feel her sense of trauma from this beginning incident, so that she would seem more vulnerable to both my characters approaching her later and to the way her life sort of shifts subtly. I always felt like Claire was a character who, you know, had this thing happen to her, and effectively it sort of like broke the windows, you know, in the car of her life, and so she was sort of driving down the freeway all of a sudden with the wind blowing through her car, you know, not quite feeling exhilarated, but also sort of freaked out.
When someone endures an experience like
You
this.
see a lot of the blue here too. This is we have daylight out the windows and shooting tungsten stock.
Did it say anything?
If you talk to the FBI, we will come to your house and fuck you and kill you.
The "fuck you and kill you" line was in the book, and I thought it was very succinct and to the point, and said a lot about, you know, I cut to Jeremy so that you get the idea that it was his character who said that. You know, these guys are serious.
Walk within 100 feet of her, that's 10 years. Okay, you got 2 strikes against you already. They got
The thing about intimidating a witness, as one of the guys I interviewed, actually, one of the criminals I interviewed, actually, he had ultimately been convicted for intimidating a witness, and they had given him a 10-year sentence.
What happened with the assistant manager kid?
Yeah. Well, next time Skeletor comes in the bank with an AK, I think he's gonna think twice about hitting that alarm, and because I think he's got tuned up.
That tuned-up line was there. I liked it from the book, too. So I cut this scene, which was the end of this bit, which was kind of gives us more expository information about Charlestown. It also makes John kind of winning. Like, he didn't need to be any more winning. He was already so winning. This is where he does this, all this exhibition, 370 bank robberies, professional guys all come from Charlestown. Stuff that really was accomplished by the cards in the beginning. And this just felt so procedural to me. As in, like, bump. See, Charlestown. There it is. And we seeded the bridge, closing the bridge, and all this stuff was stuff that, again, felt like we kind of got it in the movie. The one thing I missed was about how, like, guys, you know, when they're in that neighborhood, they can ditch the police easier, which sort of explained Doug's movements. And I like this metaphor about handing down like a trade, but again, it was in the opening.
Agent Quinlan will set you up with a detail. In the meantime, if there's anything your witness specialist can't do.
And also suggested that they were had a police detail looking after her, so she wasn't just being thrown to the wolves. And this also linked the two of them for their, you know, future sort of love triangle-ish relationship.
Hi, how you doing?
This scene was cut out. This woman's fabulous. I love her. I did the extended DVD just to make sure that her and her husband here got to be in the movie. This is about how they laundered money. And my research, what I found is a lot of times they would, you know, do exactly this: buy 100 pounds of marijuana and sell it to somebody else, in effect laundering the money. I also found out that 100 pounds of marijuana costs about $100,000, according to my research. So that's convenient if any of you are thinking about that. This also was meant to, like, sort of plant the seeds of the information about the florist, Doug's resentment of the florist. The Portuguese slide line that he has is something that I heard guys say about the Tobin Bridge a lot because of the Portuguese who lived in Chelsea and surrounding neighborhoods coming over the bridge into Charlestown.
The guys are fucking Lucky Charms Irishmen who can't find no one to sell his AKs to.
And it was kind of an ugly slur thing to say. It also had some rooted neighborhood feel. And now he says, you know, $2,000 a week on monsters, and yay, monsters, green monsters are what they call 80 milligram Oxycontins, and yay is yayo or cocaine. And this is where you hear that Doug's first implication that Doug used to have a drug problem. So there's a lot of exposition. And here's Mike. This is the kind of guy that was described to me as the sort of fellow who you wouldn't expect to be selling 100 pounds of marijuana, but who would. He said it looked like a newborn baby. That was his ad lib. That's my favorite. I thought about calling the movie Newborn Baby.
100 pounds. 100 grand.
This is a auto shop in Southie. This is the real owner, and he's pretending to be somebody who would buy all that marijuana. He's really a very nice guy, and his family was there, and they enjoyed filming that day. Again, those scenes, you know, we kind of tail back into our story. They flesh out the world, and but, you know, in the first act, before things were really getting going, I felt that, you know, when I watched it with an audience, people were kind of flagging and not knowing, well, what is this movie, and where should I be, you know, where should I put my interest to focus myself? So I had to kind of sharpen it. But if you really like the movie and want to see more about it, I think they're interesting scenes on their own merit. And this is a much longer sequence that showed kind of what they did with the money.
Now it's time for the fun part.
This is like the shot from Alien, you know, with Sigourney Weaver's face and the alien comes right out. They would go gamble a bunch of money, cash the chips in, and get new, you know, clean money back. And then basically they just wasted all their money on, like, you know, girls and drugs and kind of partying, and, you know, buy a car or whatever. But they couldn't buy anything and really put their name on it. So they kind of frittered it all away. I thought that was, you know, I kept finding that in the research, that this was like, you rob all these banks, these trucks, and get a huge sack of money, and just ended up, like, spending it at, you know, centerfolds. But at least it sort of bonded them and told you what they were like and what their life was like, and it also contrasted Doug and what his kind of, what his place was in the group. And he felt like he was, you know, was over this. He wasn't using drugs. He wasn't into that kind of lifestyle anymore. And that helped you understand sort of his trajectory.
Hey, Christopher.
This is a scene where we have all our bank robbers as extras at the bar.
I'm trying to tell these motherfuckers about your father. The feds will never understand a guy who's facing 40 years. Yeah. They give him the opportunity to walk scot-free if he gives up his friends. He tells him, suck a dick. Give me the 40.
And it's established that his father, Doug's father, is somebody that's kind of a local hero to these guys, even though he's a guy doing 40 years in prison, you know? And so he's kind of the son of a celebrity in this neighborhood in a weird way.
Give me an umbrella for my beer. Let me get a Shirley
You find out he's sober here.
Poor fucking sober bastard.
And because he's called a sober bastard. That's the way you find that out. I'm really good at exposition. So if I want a character and the character's sober, I'll have one of the other characters in the movie call him sober. It's hard to come up with that.
You want some snappers?
And here, this is an extended dialogue where Krista's really a little bit more fleshed out in terms of some of the kind of like ghetto real stuff and people that I interviewed and things that I found and expressions that I heard. And she's a little uglier, but it tilted her character in a way that made it like suggested something different that I felt didn't help the rest of the story that I was trying to tell stand up in the other form.
Jamaican started. What Jamaican?
Fucking Somalian started talking shit when it was my daughter.
You were Shane?
Tanya was with us. And Cheryl, too.
Tanya was with us. It's the accent. Good about there.
Yeah. All these sea yuppies down here. They think there's no more serious white people in Charlestown.
That's a line I got from a guy who had been in federal prison who came back to Charlestown. And that's something that was there to kind of highlight or underline, really, the history of racial animosity and the vestiges of it that still exist in places. And they're fueled by they're complicated by the white gentrification, as well as the working class white people, as well as the fact that there's it's very multi-ethnic now in Charleston.
Have one beer. One beer ain't gonna kill you, right? Drink that beer for me real quick.
And this has changed so that now Doug is home, has gone home, is less kind of complicit in any way with hooking up with her. And he's watching Heat. This is tipping my hat to Heat here. And she's knocking on the door, like his old life, knocking on the door, wanting to be let in. And he's trying to kind of resist it. Again, in this version of the story, it sort of works. In the other one, I think we were equally served with the shorter cut. Here she kind of just comes in, forces herself on him. I was going to do this all in one, like pull her in from the door, have her stand there, and then she comes and sits on my lap, which I did do, but it just was too long, and you didn't want to watch that for... It was awkward. Here, Blake's great, because it's not like I don't know, it's nothing sort of... It's just tawdry and depressing, and she's trying to use her kind of sex to get his involvement and attention, because it's the only thing she has left, and she kind of like sits down on him, and she's like... moves her underwear around, and it's like just it's not a healthy relationship, I guess. That's what I would say. But I wanted to hold the continuity of like one shot, at least so you felt like you were really watching people have sex and have the sort of illusion of that. I thought would make it feel like more sort of uncomfortable and icky in a way, and sad, really sad for her, sorry for her. She kind of debases herself. And he's just like, lost, completely lost, and just hates himself more. This is something I was planning on doing from the beginning, which is using, recording a real AA meeting, using people and voices from a real AA meeting, and laying it over the Doug character's kind of restless experience where he's turned his anxiety about wanting to use drugs and focused it back into his like kind of regimen from being a professional athlete. And I thought that would kind of tell the story of who this guy was right in the beginning. He's kind of restless but kind of manically dedicated. He sees this old drug dealer in the street and decides not to go in there, and then goes into, this is a real food bank and AA meeting in Charlestown, and they let me shoot in it exactly as it was. And I thought it was really haunting and powerful, and also reminded people that there are folks here in the United States, many of them who can't afford to buy food. Here in the meeting, this is all people from the real meeting who agreed to let me film them, basically, and they told their stories, and it was really, except for that he's an actor telling the Eskimo story, but all these people told these beautiful, like really moving stories, at the sort of what was an extended meeting that we shot, and I laid them all over the approach sequence here. I would have liked to have done a 20-minute version of this. It was so, I loved this. It was so moving. It was so, the people were so powerful, and they were so committed to doing it, and it said so much, I thought, storytelling-wise. But when I had, it was like a 5-minute version I had in the very first cut, and people kind of were rolling their eyes, so I trimmed it. The movie itself was also like 3.5 hours. I gotta cut something. Now here you see Doug stalking Claire, various cuts. I tried to accelerate it as much as I could and still tell the story that he's been, watching her over a period of time. This is all really in Charlestown. Those are the projects behind me there. That's the laundromat. And right up the street is the actual brownstone that Claire lives in. And you see how these very different kinds of architecture and ways of living are, are right set cheek to jowl there in Charlestown. I like that, he looks out behind the counter and sees that, like the stuff that's being sold is basically this random, like, hostess stuff and, muscle building product at the laundromat. This sort of random nature of what, what is sold at places like this is kind of interesting. This is a tricky scene. I'm not sure we ever quite got it right. The idea of approaching her and, how the idea that he's sort of coming close and close and closer to her because he's interested in her, and then boom, she sort of pounces on him. It's a really delicate thing to try to communicate, and I toyed with it a million different ways. Dylan Titchener, the editor, must have done 20 cuts of this scene with me going back and forth until we finally settled on where we are.
I can just hang him up when I get home.
And also, this was tough. This was her first day, and she had to we forgot to put blood on the shirt, so we had to do it digitally later at great expense. It's embarrassing. This was her first day, and she was, having to do this sort of emotional stuff and this slightly awkward kind of dance of a scene, like having just come from, I think, Greece or something, where she was still doing this bridge project, these 2 plays. So it was a bit of a, kind of jet lag for her, both literally and, dramatically. But she really committed and dove in, and she was also doing an American accent. I was really impressed.
Just having a bad week.
That good cry at the nail salon always felt to me like very much like a kind of Will Hunting line. There's a few of those in here. Sometimes it's hard not to just ape your own work, but try to limit the Gone Baby Gone and Good Will Hunting stuff. I mean, as much as you can, considering they're, Boston-based movies with protagonists with similar attitudes.
Why don't you let me buy you a drink? Make up for letting you down with the quarters. I'll, see if we can turn your week around. What's the worst that could happen?
FBI, open the door!
That guy saying open the door is that's our real advisor. So I wanted to have a real voice of somebody who'd been through a lot of those doors for that pre-lap cut. This woman, we actually shot this in LA as a pickup, and this young lady had never been out of Boston until she came to LA to shoot this sequence. This was emblematic. It was definitely, there's people like that, many people in Boston who've, just basically always been there their whole life and never left. And I gave that to Doug at the end of the movie.
Like Downey Christmas.
He played the sort of menacing rapist guy at the bar in Gone Baby Gone. Brian Scannell.
You're gonna need a friend. And she ain't it. Great girl, though. She really loves you, I can tell.
All this stuff I wanted to try to move through as quickly as possible, and also, communicate in a shorthand that got the information there, but that also felt specific to the place and not cliche. And John and Brian were really helpful in kind of doing that. It was a pickup for helping to explain how they solved the, caught these guys. Found out about the junction box and the, inside job nature of it. So this is a sort of extended piece of this date at Neptune's. I always liked the shot from outside the window. When I shortened the scene, I couldn't use it. And he says, he knows the manager from playing hockey. It kind of ties him into the community and his history in a way that felt very real to me.
Why don't you take it at the end of the day, slide down the back of a brontosaurus like Fred Flintstone, call it a night.
And also at the end of the scene, the issue of his father comes up. And because in this longer version of the movie, we've hopefully know his father's in prison already, and it brings it up earlier on because it's a bit more poignant, I guess, and it becomes even more important. I wanted to try to get it in there. Ultimately, we were just as well served compressing it, particularly with the theatrical ending.
It's bandpox.
Yuppie.
Yeah.
So where does the word come from?
It comes from back in the 90s, like the Toonies supplied all the tunes to Charlestown, because...
and the Toonie thing, it gets explained as, the name comes from the stereos that got stolen out of the tunes, out of the guys' cars. I always thought that was funny. It was another thing from my research. And a lot of this stuff just, atrophies on the longer cut because, you just feel the thing wobbling and too long, and so you have to shrink it down. But, on an individual scene basis.
Yeah. You don't get out much.
I like it. And he don't get out much. That actually was in the trailer, but not in the movie.
Bobblehead.
And this is, this longer cut really sort of cements this love story, and goes into it a little bit more deeply. It's shorthanded in some ways because, part of me felt like watching this stuff and the longer version of it, you kind of knew it was going to happen, you knew it was headed, you had an intuitive sense of how real relationships evolved, movie relationships evolved, and what you needed to see were certain kind of indicators and moments of depth, but not, play out the whole thing. It's a balance, I like all these scenes, but I think you have to be really rigorous and disciplined and not indulgent with the audience's time. And if you wear them out too early, they're not there for you at the end of the movie because they're bored and tired already. This we shot, there's the Charlestown Bridge, this one under, this is out. I wanted it to be sort of magical and romantic, and he pretends that it's his friend's boat, but obviously they're just breaking into the boat. And this also helps me feel like she was complicit in this romance. She knew this guy was a bit of a bad boy or whatever you want, and was a guy that wasn't telling her who he really was completely, and had probably done stuff that she wouldn't want to know about. But she looked past that, and I like the evenness that gave their relationship.
Best cup I could find.
And I like the idea that, again, the story that he tells her. She says, "What do you know about bank robbers?" And that surprise, we really couldn't play it twice in the car and here. It had to be one or the other.
I can honestly tell you I have never taken another girl here before in my entire life.
Oh, yeah?
That's the truth.
But she says, "What do you know about bank robbers?" And he's forced to sort of explain Charlestown and bank robbing and its history. This is a nice, this is very well researched, JJ's bar and the ice cream shop and all this stuff is real, and it's a way of, I think, communicating in a relatively short period of time to the audience, the kind of deeper nature of how these people ended up this way, how we end up who we are, touching on these themes, again, of parents and children and our history being alive with us in good ways and bad.
We're all the big arm kind of guys hung out. They were like rock stars in the neighborhood, fancy cons, pretty girls. And you heard rumors about jobs they pulled, big houses they had, Bill Ricker.
I like any line where you could say the big houses they had in Bill Ricker and Winthrop.
A lot of kids in the ice cream
loved
shop. Their nose was pressed against the glass.
This is one of my favorite little bits and speeches in the movie, but again, it was just like, it felt like the audience was not understanding where they were, what movie they were in, where they were going, what they were supposed to be paying attention to. It was kind of meandering. But for me, I liked it. We're back at Sully's now in the daytime. This is a Steadicam shot. Colin Anderson, our Steadicam operator, is just brilliant. I mean, he's just so still with the camera. You can barely see it moving. And I wanted to have, to not blow out the windows. I wanted the stops to be similar enough where you could see the city in the background and also see that they're on like little freeway there behind them, and kind of contrast the nature of their existence with the city. I also have it feel like a sort of neighborhood bar.
So no need to remove it from the equation?
What?
You heard me?
What are you, trigger man now?
Just loose ends, kid.
You didn't get the fucking electric chair brought back over to Charlestown.
Don't be so
I say,
goddamn patient.
get the electric chair brought back to Charlestown. That's a reference to the fact that the prison, the main prison in Boston, maximum security, used to actually be in Charlestown. And that's when they still had, capital punishment. And Sacco and Vanzetti were in prison there, and Malcolm X, and the last execution in Massachusetts was actually in Charlestown. I always wanted to reshoot this because I thought it was really flat and presentational, and he kind of gives up the answer too easily, but it just wasn't enough that I was able to get the money and mount the whole thing. It was serviceable, but I regretted it being so. I thought it was sort of elegantly simple, and I looked at it later and thought it was really plain and obvious. In the original book, there was a sort of a love triangle between Frawley and Claire. I kind of minimized it in the movie because I could just only have so many pages of screenplay. And what happened was, by minimizing it, it ended up being sort of neither here nor there, and not particularly interesting for either of their characters because they were sort of half measures, which doesn't say much about a person except that they might be insincere or not substantial, or the idea was that they went on this had this mini aborted romance thing, went on this date. I like some of the stuff that he talks about on this date, about the neighborhood and his job, but this was John's first day. I loved how he played it, and Rebecca looks beautiful.
They lionize criminals and complain about crime.
They lionize criminals and complain about the crime. I always thought that was a astute observation.
It's 1 square mile. You walk into Lewisburg.
Again, it just was something that,
There's 100 towns.
time-wise, I felt ultimately I couldn't afford.
Doesn't sound like a fun
It's also how
second
Claire
date.
learns about Lewisburg, which she refers to later on in the movie. But I don't think you ask any questions then. You just figure, well, maybe she knows about federal prisons.
Am I a suspect?
Would I ask you out if I thought you were a suspect?
I don't know.
And this is sort of witty. This is all from the book.
Not if I wanted to
for what a conviction. I like it. It's good writing, and it's interesting and smart, and it just wasn't supported
I might be seeing someone already.
by the rest of the movie. She says I might be seeing someone. It just feels a little bit sideways. I inserted this other piece of research, which is that when a bank robbery happens, the pictures from the security cameras are immediately emailed to the Violent Crimes and Robbery Task Force of the FBI, and so they get them on their Blackberries instantly. In fact, when I was sitting down talking to them, they would got those emails, and I thought that was kind of amazing. You know, it was the way technology was being used, and even in a kind of simple, mundane way.
Yes.
This is their second date in this version of it. So it felt a little bit more organic that she was bringing up this being robbed, but it lacked the dramatic impact of when she gets in the car and tells him right away, and it's, you know, you're sort of getting right to it.
To listen to you all night when really I'm thinking about something else.
It's just that balancing act between sort of probably what was more real and what was more effective storytelling.
A few days ago, my bank was robbed. 4 men.
There's some extra lines in here about her story, about the bank getting robbed. You know, we shot a lot of stuff and a lot of material and kind of let it go all over the place with this story, and then I just used the very select, finest bits. She did a lot of really lovely stuff.
And
You can see the lips are a little rubbery there. She's not really saying these lines.
Walk until I felt the water on my toes. It's the longest walk of my life. I kept thinking I'd step off a cliff.
You know, he hears this impact of what he's done and how his actions have impacted her, and it's moving. And in the theatrical cut, that was sort of enough. Like, he saw this and that, he absorbed that, and that started to change him. Originally, you know, I was worried that wouldn't be enough, and so I added, you know, pushed it and included this other stuff, which is, she mentions, you know, about this other guy that worked with her and who's hurt, and they go see him at the hospital. Whereas here, you know, and when I saw that, which is this version, I felt like, gosh, this is a lot of the same thing. I'm not sure we're gaining anything from this. The one thing we lost was Claire's sense of guilt, of complicity in this, but
I'm sure I'd recognize their voices.
it didn't seem worth it.
If I heard them again.
You know, maybe harder than you think.
And then boom, this is where the new material starts here. At least you weren't hurt. She says no.
No.
David was.
No, but David was.
David is Victor Garber, who appeared to only be an extra in the movie, but in fact has a lovely scene that he did. He already did this as a favor to me, and it was only one scene, and then I made it look shorter. I really been a bad friend to him on this movie.
You're like a terrible person.
By going with her, the idea, I was motivating it by him sort of faux chivalry, and also being curious about, you know, what does this guy know? What happened to this guy? The same curiosity that drove him to find her. Now I like the idea of being nervous about the police officer, kind of revealing who he was accidentally, subconsciously.
Hi.
Here's Victor.
Hi. Come to my good
We
side.
spent an hour and a half with the real doctor going over this headdress because I just felt like it looked like a World War I, like, war injury. But they assured me that that's how it would look.
Nice to meet you. I can almost see you.
So, they're hopeful.
Well, hopeful means I may recover 50% of my sight in this eye. I just want to get back to work.
You know, I'm gonna give you guys some privacy. I'll be right outside.
So Doug goes back outside, can't face his own guilt, can't confront, you know, is made uncomfortable, and he also realizes that this guy has no memories.
Big takedown robbery. Fucking punks laid the guy out.
And this is
Oh,
a little darker touch for Doug in this version, which felt okay, about him needling this cop suddenly.
I lied to the FBI.
What?
When the guy attacked David.
I wanted to set a scene in Dunkin' Donuts because Dunkin' Donuts is such an integral part of Boston. You know, we searched through a lot of locations, and some of the other folks were like thought this was, you know, so like chain and kind of mundane in that way. But actually, I really feel like it's unique and specific. And I mean, everyone in Boston, Dunkin' Donuts is just a bigger deal in Boston than I think it is anywhere else. And so the idea of like taking someone on a date to Dunkin' Donuts didn't seem strange to me, and I like that.
Robbery, weapons, he'll get 30 years. Of course, they'll worry someone's gonna come looking for the witness. FBI probably want to put you in WITSEC, you know.
This is where Doug gets pressed, you know, has to sort of, he realizes that she's identified Jem, or she could identify Jem by his neck tattoo, and so he has to sort of dance around the issue and convince her not to do it by pretending to urge her to do it initially, and basically, some people thought this wasn't credible. To me, it's like, I can imagine why no one would want to like go forward and volunteer this kind of information about really scary people because of what Doug says here, that they, you know, you're in a tough spot there. You know, you might have to go into witness protection or something like that. And I wouldn't want to, many people I don't think would want their lives interrupted in that way. Not to be witness in a robbery case. And I think a lot of people want to just sort of look the other way and go about their business. And this thing was just an ad lib to CSI. I was trying to justify how she would not be suspicious about what I knew about the criminal justice system. So I kept vamping in different ways and came up with this, litany of CSI, and then ending with bones, and then got a laugh at the director's cut. So I kept it. Felt like we needed some punctuations of, moments of laughter as the story's so kind of heavy, particularly early on.
Yeah. Really? I had a Prius. It got vandalized, of course.
What happened?
Doesn't matter. Now I'm forced to walk a mile through the project.
I always felt like lighting this at night, this always makes it look, it makes it look so nice. It's hard to understand the dual nature. It just looks so elegant, it looks like, with the, street lights and everything.
What were they doing?
And you're, literally 2 blocks away from the apartments that we go to in the next scenes. And, go in and beat these guys up.
I'm fine. I just have to, go the long way. It's all. It doesn't matter.
No, you just have to live with it, I guess. You remember what they look like?
We have another scene that I cut out, where I find out who the guys are in specific.
Ask me about it later, and we're gonna hurt some people. Whose car are we gonna take?
I always wanted to sort of set up these guys as friends and loyal to one another early on.
Kenny with the white nose.
Hey, it's good, man.
So this was cut out from the movie. This is basically to establish how it is these guys know where to find these kids in the project. They go to this guy, Kenny with the white nose, who's got this little skin problem on his nose, which is why they call him Kenny with the white nose, which is taken from a real guy. He's got a more, longer description of himself.
Kenny. In Charlestown.
This is where you see that Doug is familiar with, and Jem are familiar with this neighborhood guys, and that they exist in this world, and this is really who they are as well, and didn't want to be sugarcoating that in any way. Particularly in this version of it, it works well because it's just darker, and it paints a darker picture of these guys. And also, I thought we needed it to make literal sense of how they found out right here where these guys lived, but people kind of made the assumption that they knew, I think. Now, coming up here, now Kenny's told them, okay, this is where they live, and so they go find them. And in this version, is motivating these guys, the Dominican kids who live up in the project apartment here, to be even more vindictive, I guess, or more wanting revenge more. Basically, it's less about those guys up there than it is about Doug and Jem, and making this a more kind of savage thing and showing something darker about Doug as well, that he really is Jem's friend. He really does come from a dark place, and pushing that a little bit more. So this is elongated and made a little more intense, so that he's really participating in the ugliness of it. Short of the shooting, but he adds humiliation. It's in a way he's feeling guilty about what he's done to Claire, and out of that guilt, he takes that guilt out on these guys, as if hurting them would kind of make it go away. He drives the bottle into the back of this guy's head, and then he takes the sledgehammer and breaks his hand. This is enough of a savage beating to suggest something really unsettled and damaged inside Doug. That's hating himself and acting out on these guys. And this thing about framing them for a drug deal gone bad didn't end up being necessary later in the theatrical cut, but it is here.
This is happening again. Let's go. We're done.
And this was always the intention. The ending that's on the movie now, that's the theatrical cut, was always the ending from the beginning, and this kind of went with that. What happened was, we sort of got it on the violence level, and we also, it was a fine line in terms of how much of the world and their world we need to see.
What the fuck you talking about? No?
Jem gets another 2 shots in this version. I always like There Goes College Soccer. But...
See my face? Don't tell the cops, all right? But just remember, I seen those too.
We had to undercrank those cop cars so that we could make them go by faster. They would only drive so fast when we were shooting it because of where we were and laws about speeds you could go.
Desmond Eldon?
Yeah, works for Veracomp. Never seen the inside of a jail cell. Now, most of these guys, they got no show jobs. They take down a truck. Foreman goes, yeah, guy was here yesterday, shows us a forged time card. They can't play them games of Vericom because it's a public company. If you don't show up, it's a recorded sick day. And Desi here, he's got some interesting sick days. Bank boss.
I always thought this was interesting from the story that the idea that these are like kind of inside job guys, you know, kind of robbers who work at the phone company, really appealed to me. They're the Newtown projects, and that's a real sign, kind of in the back of Charlestown. They used to call that bay there Montego Bay for some reason, but famously many bodies and guns and stuff, according to lore, had been dumped there. It's also the place where the duck boats come out and out of the water and onto the land. I'm not sure. And that's what that ramp is there. And this monologue is designed to kind of, you know, play into what I think, you know, sort of establish the theme that's most interesting to me in the movie about the relationship between our parents, you know, parents' actions and what happens to their children. And to sort of wind that inside the lead character, he's still looking for his mother, in fact, and he's paying for the sins of his father. And he's also been told, you know, lies about his parents and doesn't know it. And you know, the mystery of how our identity is wrapped up in our parents and how the past can always be with us, haunting us. It's the most interesting theme to me, in a way.
It's been 100 cigarettes. Ash like a little mountain. He stopped crying.
And I thought if it was played in like just one or two cuts, it would just feel more natural and real and less self-conscious, more just like somebody telling their story, you know, almost anecdotally, just, you know, without a lot of histrionics, you know. Sometimes we're able to talk about even really traumatic things that have happened to us in the past in kind of matter-of-fact ways sometimes. That's what I wanted to try to accomplish. I also love the tracksuit. Really new and crisp. Right.
We lost our dog the year before,
and you can see here the color timing, you know, the putting a bit more contrast into the look of the movie. I thought made it feel more grounded and interesting, although that's become kind of in vogue, so you have to be careful not to go too far in that direction. You know, I've seen movies where you can't see the actor's eyes, they just become black, and I think you become really distanced from it.
Her name was Doris. My grandmother had a place, it's a restaurant, in Tangerine, Florida. So I used to imagine maybe that's where she went.
The sort of dance around trying to set up Tangerine, Florida without feeling too obvious about it.
She had a good reason to leave here. She didn't want to be my mother anymore. And she wasn't coming back.
I want to bring it back into like this issue of what is he if he's not. He must have an excuse to be not showing her things or hiding a part of his life from her. In the book, they go into that at great length, but we had to kind of shorthand it. These shots I want to seem, you know, like surveillance shots, but you're not really sure that that's what's happening yet. And I wanted to see Blake with the kid, so the audience understood that she had this child, you know, relatively early on and not all the way at the end of the movie. So this was the first day that a lot of these guys worked, and so I just sort of had, like, we all had a real barbecue and hung out, and I told the guys to go back and shoot it, you know, on long lenses and, you know, zooming in, zooming out, and moving camera positions, and we would just cut it together later, and it worked out because everybody kind of limbered up and got really comfortable with one another and, you know, tried out the stuff they were doing, and in a much more realistic and safe environment than if it was like, you know, day one, here's your close-up, and good luck.
Brendan Leahy by the cemetery behind Mishwan when he was 18. Pled it out. When the judge asked him why he did it, he said, I didn't like the kid.
We used some of that footage for this scene, and Sharon Seymour was the production designer, did a great job in putting together all this bank robbery, history, evidence, world, media stuff. I wanted to feel like these guys were really on top of it. And then the real FBI guys came and looked at this, and they were like, we just write, you know, like do tear-off things on a piece of paper and a whiteboard. So I was like, well, I'd like you guys to, you know, trying to make it. I don't think it would seem credible if they were up there just writing down names on a whiteboard. So we went with the PowerPoint.
With their own weapons. Big Mac's legacy is now no A.
Matt Damon's cousin, Jamie Damon, on the left there.
Even if there's a gun to his partner's head.
Yeah, McRae did 8 months easy.
And Walter Norton Jr., the trainer, is there. It's Keedy. This is all. There's Walter. Karina Chase there is the godmother to my kids.
And here's the shocker. Started making trouble, fighting with guys.
Don't they pay you to fight in hockey?
That woman right there said pay to fight hockey. You see, I just cast people who are my friends. I have no regard for her. No, she's great. And
Hockey ship sailed with the narcotics.
another Joe Lawler, who's in that scene, is one of the guys who helped me do a lot of the research. That's him at the bottom of the frame there on Charlestown and bank robbery and that kind of thing.
So we build the case. All right, let's get to work.
So I've been telling all my friends about you.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
All good, I hope.
This scene was in the book, and I read it in the book and thought, like, this is how this whole movie, needs to feel. This scene is really tight and smart and brilliantly written in the book and really dramatic and should work in the movie. All I have to do is not screw it up, almost. And so the thing I liked about it, what I thought it was a nice symbol for what else was happening in the movie was how when Jeremy comes and I'm there and Rebecca's there, and the conversation that we're having would be to an outside observer, and in fact to the Claire character, completely normal and kind of pedestrian, but in fact it has much this deeper meaning for Jeremy's character and my character, and that.
Well, I'm sure he'd be glad you're thinking about it. It's a good day. I'm having a good time.
Good.
I think anyone's had that feeling of having kind of been busted by their friend, not really, if you haven't told your friends about a girlfriend or you haven't wanted to, whoever it is, your mom or something, that, you get caught doing something you're not supposed to be doing, and that, like, blood going to your face and creeping up your neck. This is sort of a symbol for Doug wanting to escape or be somewhere else or get away. Now here he gets busted by Jem, and he tries to play it off, say that he's eating by himself, and Jem deduces by seeing that he's eating that there's a Hawaiian pizza slice there, that he couldn't possibly be him. It has to be somebody else. But in fact, he actually, I think has been following him. I want to drop the sound out here. It's that thing where something so scary happens, like it's this train wreck that's about to happen, where everything else just kind of goes away and events seem to move slowly. And
Hi.
it's like a kind of panic attack.
Hey,
Claire.
Jem.
Jim?
Jem's just Jem. I'm a friend of this loser's right here.
Nice
Hey, well,
to
sit
meet
down, relax.
And then we crossed the line. We shot some of this scene on one side of the line where the looks would be in one screen direction, and some of it in the other side. The idea was that when Jeremy came, we would shift across the line. But then, it got more complicated in the editing wise, and so each shot was kind of carefully selected according to who was seeing who and what was being understood by whom. And here, like whether or not he could see the tattoo, whether she could see it.
Secret's this way now, huh?
Did you say your name is Jim or Jen?
Jen, well, it's both.
This is from the book, and it's great. This thing about he's a real gem. I love that. It's perfect. Boston. Chuck Hogan really understands something deep about, New England and culture and people, and he's got a real affinity for it, and that's what really drew me into this. And this is the scene where Renner really just kills. I mean, he's so great in every scene, but this one, because we've kind of established him as shooting the guy, the leg before, I think, now it seems really, and that shot was sort of the central shot of this thing. Now it seems really, he seems really potent and scary, I think, even though, he's just sort of being genial. And also it's his performance, he's got this sort of menace underneath that smile that feels real.
Don't get too used to your life of leisure here. Dougie here, he's a real workaholic, He's always taking his work home with him.
Always taking his work home with him. That's my favorite line. Let's see.
All right, brother. Take care of yourself, all right? You good?
I'll see you home. Hey, it was nice to meet you.
You too.
I love Rebecca's sort of understated stuff she does here. Like sweet and kind of trying to ingratiate herself with him and insecure about where she stands with him in their relationship. But she does a lot with a little.
Who are you following, Jem? Me or her?
This is Jeremy's first scene that he shot, and it's in this real practical house in Charlestown, and we shot a lot of footage and tried a whole different range of stuff. That's a lot of what we did with a lot of the actors, but all the actors, in fact, but also with Jeremy. With Jeremy, I got this great range of stuff so that I was able to calibrate it. Like that was the biggest he ever kind of exploded in that line. I ended up using that. And I liked the way when the operator stood up with the handheld camera, it kind of jostled. It made things feel unstable, so I left that in. And this is the most comic reading of this line.
Let's start fucking all the witnesses. Right? Yeah, I'm blowing the assistant manager. Am I smart now?
I thought, ultimately, when I looked at the movie, it seemed like the best choice was that he would be more of a wise ass, like sort of absurdist with him in that way. Like, this guy's doing the most outrageous thing in the world, and he's trying to lecture me.
I don't like the gods on the next thing, all right? One kid is like fucking G.I. Joe. He wears the vest on the outside, he tucks his pants into his fucking combat boots.
The stuff with the guards, how they wear their pants, and this stuff, that came from some guys who robbed armed trucks who told me they would go around and see the guys who were dressed the most slovenly and choose them as targets because they thought that, if they weren't dressed well or weren't put together well in the job, it probably meant that they would be easy to knock over. There's a continuity mismatch here. but I just liked the performances, so I left it and see how Jeremy's standing up and looking at me here. And then we cut to him, he's got his hands down, he's leaning against the table.
We get pinched. Remember whose idea this was, okay? Be ready on Friday.
We're the first movie to ever be allowed to shoot at the MCI Cedar Junction State Penitentiary in Massachusetts, also called Walpole. And we were allowed to come in on it. This is all the real places that you check in. There's this little airlock thing. You look up and see the guard, and they open the other door for you, and now you're in the inner yard. We ran out and got this backlit shot in the middle of shooting the other thing because the light was so nice. So as you can see my breath, it kind of gives away how late in the year it is. And here's the visitor's room in Walpole, and this was a real prison guard. This guy went to my high school, and he's not a prison guard at that prison, but we had such a hard time casting anybody, from who didn't have a criminal record, who could come up and work there. That we used him. He's great. I love how he feels all chagrined at he's indignant at having to smooth out the paper. He doesn't like that I crumpled it. And this is the first time you see Chris, the only time, and just this idea of us seeing using reflections a lot in this. So you see my reflection over him, his reflection over me, and the connection between father and son. I thought this was such a melancholy place. And when I went in and visited these real prisons, one of the things I found was the visiting rooms were mostly just women and kids, families coming in to visit. And because we were able to use this room, I thought it lent a huge amount of energy and sorrow and authenticity and depth to the scene in the story, because it just was bleeding off the walls. You could feel decades of loneliness and anger and despair.
You still getting in trouble now?
Hey, you know how it is. Can't take no shit.
Man, you're getting a little old for that bullshit, though, aren't you?
And this is another thing. There's a South Boston-Charlestown conflict in the prisons that's going on.
Put a year together, good behavior, get your points down.
And as well as getting class, if you do good behavior, you get he said your points down. It means basically you get evaluated, and eventually if he had sort of not gotten into trouble, he could have gone to this other prison in Norfolk where I went and visited a bunch of guys. And the big thing there was that you got Ben and Jerry's ice cream, and that's why no one fought at Norfolk, because you'd get sent to another prison, and that prison had little pizzas and ice cream, and they desperately wanted to hang on to what they had. So in fact, there were more lifers and murderers in the other prison than there were in this one. This is for people who engaged in bad, violent behavior.
Making a change?
Chris Cooper came in and just, visited this prison, went away, put his character together, came back, and the guards who were working with us on this day were just blown away. They were like, he looks like a real con. They couldn't believe it.
Okay.
You got 5 minutes.
And this relationship with his father is the most important relationship to Doug, and it's his tie to this community, and it's his tie to this world, and what makes it so hard to change is the one thing that's so hard for him to push against. And I like this idea of a guy that you see who seems to have all this authority and toughness in the movie, in the story, and then all of a sudden you see him come in and he's got this childlike, slight shyness with his father. It's brought back to who he was when he was 10 years old. And he gets the courage to ask about this thing about his mother, and he gets kind of slapped down again by his father, and you feel like that was their relationship his whole childhood, and all of a sudden, hopefully it reveals a kind of vulnerability about the guy that you wouldn't have otherwise understood.
Give you an activity. I didn't think you'd carry it like...
Carry it like a fucking disease is a line in the book that actually Krista said about her dress. It itches like a fucking disease. I switched it and put it here.
Well, look out your front door.
I also like the 22-year-old girl's reference, kind of reminds you that Krista really is a lot like, the Blake character is a lot like who his mother was. And the cycles that we're in, and the ways that we trap ourselves, and that we repeat things.
No different. That's the hard truth.
And see, there's the reflections again. This the shadow of the father and the son. And the idea that he's that's, it's a hard truth, and, he's come to live with it. Whether we have to accept our fate or whether we believe we can change it. So it's kind of central conflict in this.
Look, I gotta die.
The guy with 5 life sentences said that to me, too.
But I'll see you again. This side or the other.
And of course, is that line I wanted to use to sort of anchor the movie at the end, so that you understood that it was really about these themes, this conflict. You can see the tower out there. I had them knock down the light on that window 4 times, so it wasn't blown out, so you could see that tower. But that this is the basic spine of the story, to me. This is, the hockey rink where she works, the sort of one that we're making look a little bit down.
So I saw your picture yesterday.
You sure it was me?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, the Boys and Girls Club?
Yeah, it was under Local Heroes banner.
Yeah, you got a real low standard for who qualifies on that.
Apparently.
There's a guy who is a great who's a bank robber who's a famously good hockey player who told me that he could hit anything with a hockey puck. And Sean Podine, who's a friend of mine who's a professional hockey player, they said about him, they were like, Pods, they used to say about him, it was like, he's got so much heart, he can't even skate backwards, but, he's in the NHL. I don't know if that's true. I never asked him if he really couldn't skate backwards, but I always liked the idea of a guy that was wanted to be in the NHL, was just a worker, and wasn't even talented enough to be able to skate backwards. Podine is very talented.
Look at that picture, and I see a 20-year-old kid who thinks he's, got it all figured out right before he's about to throw it all away.
Here, I thought it was important to hear that he had lost it. He had thrown stuff away. He had lost so much in his life. He had blown it, in effect. You have a movie with a character who feels like his life is already over and given up. And, with her, he re-engages. And also tried to bury this reference to the uncle being across the street in the context of this other scene, so it feels like a cute sort of joke and not like expository information. And this love scene, in contrast to the other one, I want it to feel loving and delicate and moody, and here now, out of that love scene, she remembers back to being dropped off on the beach, which is meant to signify that finally she's sort of let go of this trauma a little bit. She's, through this involvement with him. Ironically, he's the one who did it to her, and he's also the one who helps her. Here you can hear EEI, sports radio, which is what a lot of would be on one of these barbershops, and start to feel the Red Sox Fenway aspect of the story kind of creeping in. I also like the idea of taking other people's hair and DNA and planting it in a crime scene. And this is all details that I got from guys from the FBI, how they would prep weapons. There was somebody that would actually, wash down every bullet so that, it could never be matched to anything. And I thought, this is, how smart guys, even though they were kind of brown bag robbers, but, doesn't mean they're not smart. There's the Old North Church. Boston's North End's like a small, beautiful old Italian neighborhood. And there was a real robbery, in fact, just right where the car is, about 100 feet back, right there, in the North End, where the guys shot it out with the truck driver and took off and used the escape route that we used for this chase. And so it was originally a movie theater in the book, and so I switched it to thought it'd be more cinematic to rob the North End, and I also based it on something that was real, so it made me feel more confident about, using it in the movie. But I took a lot of the dialogue from the movie theater thing in the robbery, in the book. And I wanted to show the mask faces first, so the audience could get sort of warm up to them, and in case people were jarred by them. And this is an idea I always liked, just this notion of what happens, you put a mask on, you have a gun, and just all of a sudden people are, in the real world, and someone just turns up and looks at you, this incongruity of committing these crimes among all these civilians going about their day-to-day lives, and also the parallel of, Doug being a young boy and who he is now, and that thing we talked about earlier. A guy told me when he was doing one robbery once, he was standing on the street like this with his gun, and someone walked by holding a cell phone and didn't even notice him. Just walked right by him on the street. And we tried to do that for this sequence, but it just seemed too silly and distracting. That's a shot I copied from Indiana Jones, where Harrison Ford looks out the window of the car and realizes nobody's driving.
All right, you're gonna get hurt.
Put that fucking gun down now.
I got you, motherfucker.
It's Mike Yeba, who did a fine job for us, playing the armored truck guard. Felt very real. It's like the G.I. Joe guy who wanted to be special forces.
Fucking shut the fuck up, all right? Fucking knew it. Damn it.
All right, God, just take it easy, all right? Take it easy. Drive slow. Drive normal.
Here we're out to the North End. This is where this chase starts, and this took days and days and days and days and days and days to shoot. But ultimately worked out really well. We had great stunt drivers. Gary Himes guys did an incredible job. Cars guys did a great job. Alex Witt did a great job. The stunt guys, in the car were fabulous. We were able to put cameras in the car with, the stunt guys, and we believe are the actors because they're wearing masks. So it was a tremendous asset. We wanted to do a lot of stuff kind of car to car, where you're seeing over the cop onto them and vice versa. It's a place, for example, where you use CG for these bullet holes and stuff like that. And we had some problems with our effects sort of taking a long time to reset, practical effects while we were there, and ended up being a huge ordeal. And it was much simpler, just put bullet holes in this way. They looked just as good, if not better, because you could make them really specific. Here's an example of that, like in the car onto them. And these Sparrow cams, like low cameras that mounted on the front, like sort of front fender area, and they're low. They give you that feeling of like the walls going by that exactly there. It makes it feel faster, and it makes it feel like, you know, it gives you that sense of being in the rabbit warren kind of the North End and all these windy streets. I always debated whether or not to put the horn in there. I ended up doing it.
How you like that, motherfucker?
And this is what was really, it was just something that really happened, although without the burn. These guys really did in their escape, pull a switch car out, stop, get out of their car and get in the switch car and take off, leaving the police stuck behind their car. And because of the geography of the neighborhood, it took them a long time to back out, and they lost them. This throw of this lighter was a miracle that it hit the edge right here. Watch, ready? Boom. Hit the opposite side of the car and bounced back in. You give me 1,000 chances to do it again. I wouldn't be able to do it like that. There you could see the one little thing that was left in for the stunt car, a little brick next to the curb. We left in, didn't see.
Dino.
What?
Close the bridge.
There used to be a piece of exposition where he said, oh, the Charlestown Bridge is, whenever there's a big bank robbery in the city, the police close the Charlestown Bridge. We took that out, and I like just having John kind of intuitively know that that's where they would be headed and that it was them and stuff. This is, Chris Rouse did a great little piece of editing up here where he turned something that was basically nothing into this little sort of stop and start piece of tension. I really liked it. There's a Sparrow cam again following. Great. Drivers were spectacular in this movie. Right here, it looks like he comes up behind him, slams on his brake, and swerves, but that actually didn't happen. It wasn't shot like that. It's just an illusion of editing. You can see the cameras are undercranked slightly. You can undercrank as much as you possibly can to make it look faster. The only danger is that at a certain point the police lights start to look funny. The popcorn lights start to go crazy. Woo, that car almost whacked him right there. I left it in because it's always, of course, because it looked great, but of course in the movie it never looks as dangerous as it feels like in real time. It really happens. You watch the clip later and you're like, yeah, I guess that looks scary. This scene here was like an eighth of a page in the script, and when I had people read the script, they always would go, the first thing they would say is, oh, I love that scene where the cop turns away. And after a while, at first I was excited, and after a while I started to feel depressed by the fact that people seem to think the best part of the movie was the 1/8 of a page gag where the police officer decides that it's not worth it. But I do love it too. That's actually Slane's uncle, that police officer. So he was on both sides. His family was on both sides of the divide there.
Fuck was that?
You didn't want to end up on the wall at the VFW?
It's another thing that I found that they did, which was burning the money bands, which seemed like an odd thing to do, but I guess, it was like the way of destroying evidence. They would take all the bands off the money, and it seemed like you could find the ashes or something. That using money in the dryer is what they do with consecutive bills. So take the money, and if the serial numbers are all consecutive, and you throw them in the dryer, and it just basically turns them over a bunch and breaks them up. And I said, that was it? You guys would then spend the consecutives? And they were like, yeah, it's broken up.
And that, as they say, is that. This is the not fucking around crew. So find me something that looks like a print so I can grab one of these assholes and shake their tree, because this not fucking around thing is about to go both ways.
Here's Boston Sand and Gravel, where I get picked up. A guy looking out there is another of the local guys that I really liked his look, and the idea that the foreman kind of was in on protecting him and anticipated that he'd get arrested. We had an actor who was a police officer who was arresting me, and a real cop was showing him how to do it, and I said, why doesn't the real guy just do it? So it's a real police officer, and he kind of tugs on my arm, and that was a very authentic way. So here's just an extended piece of the arrests. Jem has a little extra bit with Frawley. I have a little extra sass with the interrogator.
Liar.
It's the idea that anyone who asks for a lawyer is guilty and immediately asks for a lawyer. It's a very kind of Boston attitude. I liked it, but that and this ultimately seems superfluous.
You aren't supposed to come out.
This is me setting up basically setting up the Glonesy joke, but you get the Glonesy joke just by watching Glonesy. And I'm not that funny in this, so it's not that good.
Right there.
This is a little more head on this shot.
Come on.
You got him, but who got me? Courier, get on the ground before I pop your fucking teeth out.
Come on, read it. Read it all. There's about 5 things there. Please, what the fuck is it with you guys in Charlestown?
So you
Don't
kind
you
of
try to read? Come on,
get
let's
what
go.
he's trying to
Things
do.
there, read 'em.
And it goes into the
Not asking, it's not a choice.
goes
It's
into
not
the same
asking.
joke, which is my favorite joke in the movie. And that's why I wanted to call the movie Authenticious.
Nothing what?
We should call the Blu-ray cut Authenticious. The Authenticious Blu-ray DVD edition. Here's the kind of interrogation scene, and I wanted to set it up with backfill the Dino character by establishing that he was from Charlestown and kind of became a cop. Because a lot of these guys I met were sort of, if guys became cops in Charlestown, some of them would move out of the city, or they would only work certain beats, and that there would be this tension when a guy was from Charlestown would become a police officer, and that he would know Doug's father. It also helped, keep alive the theme of the dad.
County crews ain't what they used to be. Dorchester, Southie.
Dorchester South, they're looking to make a move again. Is that from this research I did about this sort of gang wars from the white kids in Boston and how they're fighting over their share of the drug trade and how prison life kind of affects life on the outside and vice versa.
Use those secrets against them and put those people in prison.
I also like the fact that the Doug character would still be, even though he wants to change, he would still be contemptuous of a guy like this, and that they would have their, have a kind of a standoff on values, I guess.
You know, we lifted a print off.
And I like how, Titus isn't provoked at all. He just goes back to this line about the print. He's heard it 100 times. He's been called a rat 100 times. He's been, insulted everywhere you can. It means nothing to him.
Douglas McRae. You and your boys didn't just roll a Star Market over in Malden for a box of quarters.
And I like John doing the accent, kind of like, exaggerating it, establishing him as not being from Boston, as an outsider, somebody looking from this world from, somewhere else, from having this jaundiced eye at this whole subculture. Even more, he's just, disdain for it and anger.
The guard, who is 2/3 to a retard, has miraculously clung to life. Now, if it were up to me, and they gave me 2 minutes and a wet towel, I would
He says he would, if he could, he would kill the guard. Their anger at the guard, that also came from, there was an incident, one of these robberies where a guard, took out his gun and started shooting, and the police I talked to were quietly, off the record, dismissive and contemptuous of that guard, and the idea that,
Very clear.
and so I stuck that into the scene with John.
Various parties will bandy about
The idea being that the guard endangered people by not doing what he was supposed to do.
cooperation or otherwise assisting the prosecution.
And one of the main ways that they catch these guys is that they catch they catch people for something and threaten them with a sentence unless they cooperate, and they get cooperators, and that's how they build a case. And his kind of way of saying, look, I'm not going to take any, give any of you guys a break for anything, is a way of kind of throwing down the gauntlet and saying it's not going to be about anyone getting leniency on their sentencing. I'm going to go after the full ride for all of you. And then seating that, go fuck yourself. I really wanted to leave that an extra moment because there's a callback to it at the end of the movie. I never knew if audiences would remember.
Your code of silence finally gives way to fear of trafficking in cigarettes to prevent sexual enslavement.
This is another, it felt a little bit Good Will Hunting to me, but I left it in.
Hey, next time you guys want to take pictures of me, just call ahead. We can do better than a barbecue. A calendar shoot. Maybe topless, lubed up, whatever you guys are into. FBI.
The antenna is also, will be, is meant to seed for when they puts the note on John's antenna at the end of the movie. And that's meant to be that Doug gives that note to a little kid who puts it on there, and I shot that. But at the end of the day, it was just too much shoe leather, and but I still believe that's what happened, that Doug doesn't do it himself.
Can I go? Good luck with that print.
I liked having the house here be spare and be empty, and it was actually something that was suggested by J.J. Abrams, who's a director and a guy who was talking about the movie, and he said he thought John should, if he had nothing in his apartment, it would sort of suggest something about his life, and so I took him up on that suggestion. I really think the secret to directing is knowing who to listen to and soliciting ideas. I mean, obviously, if you're friends with J.J. Abrams, he created Alias, so I get to be friends with him that way. He's an obvious one to listen to. Malik told us to have the Skylar character leave before the Will character in the end of Good Will Hunting. So, I always try to expose myself to as many other really smart directors, expose the material, not myself, to smart directors before I do something and see what kind of tips you can get. So this version of the same scene, I reshot this scene basically because I didn't feel that it ended with a sufficient sense of connectedness between Doug and Claire, and so he didn't have as much to lose when everything came crashing down. I still like this scene a little bit better and the way it's kind of played, in part because I think reshoots never quite capture the same essence of something that's done in the course of production. And also, I just loved this location, the old and new there, between the Hancock and the church, and just the way that I feel like this picture captures something about the city and about their relationship. And, I got the crane, put it all the way out in the water. It was a lot of work. But, ultimately, we had to forego that for something where we felt like they were connected a little bit more. And also, it made him look a little bit stupid to be out in the public with her when he was kind of a suspect and the cops were on to him. That was the other main issue, which killed me because I really liked this.
Where do we go?
Whatever you want.
The way the original scene works here, you'll see she then turns and kind of asks him about the Dominican kids because she's hurt. She read something about how one of them got shot, and so it keeps that story alive, and it raises this idea of who's responsible for our actions, and how do we, who is he, and her not knowing his complete self, and it was definitely in the right soup thematically with the rest of the movie, and it works for the ending that I shot. That's included with this cut, the extended cut ending, because it brings up the Dominican guys, but it doesn't. Otherwise, it just goes on too long.
Local gangsters, apparently.
But this one thing I really like is this. Doug having to now this. Anytime that he's telling her something that's the audience knows the truth, and he's having to lie to her, and two characters knowing two different things, or the audience being aware of a character having a secret, I guess. It's always interesting. Even though he's denying it, he's still kind of rationalizing and justifying what he did to her. He wants her to know that it was okay in a way. He did it for her.
He hurt you. Someone hurt him. Too bad. That's the way it goes. That's common.
I don't think karma works like that.
Well, however it works, worked out bad for them kids. I'm not gonna shed a tear out. Let's go get some food, okay?
Fro,
What is it?
phone conversation between Claire Casey and a burner cell about an hour ago. See if you can recognize the voice.
Hey, can I come over? I want to talk to you.
Yeah. Where have you been?
I'm sorry, I got...
Titus always wanted to be a little fashiony. He's gonna see the collar open, the tan, the silver hair. He was eventually I was like, Titus, you're a Boston cop. You're not. This isn't Miami Vice. But he's gonna be mad that I said that. He's just so handsome. It's hard. Yeah, he wanted to compete with Ham.
Fancy.
I always liked that fancy. It was like he's so kind of. He's got this edge throughout the movie. John does of contempt for certain people and going to kind of cut through the bullshit. And a wry sense of irony that I really liked. That's different from the Don Draper stuff, even if he's still wearing a suit and has a good haircut.
Desmond Eldon, part of a crew that we tied into a bank job at North End and at least 3 other armored car robberies.
The original book, and a little bit in the first cut of the movie, there was a sense of a possible flirtation between the two of them, but it was sort of only half developed, so I lost it because I thought it was distracting ultimately. But you can see the sort of extra edge of he pushes the needle a little bit deeper there, and that's a vestige of when he was kind of jealous and angry at her for personal reasons.
The apartment? No. Florist.
This is Michelin Projects in Charlestown. There's this old, Revolutionary War era cemetery tucked in between a freeway and 2 housing developments projects. Something about it spoke perfectly to the movie and worked well for the scene.
Look. Pick up an extra guy, all right? Or go with 3 guys.
I wanted to shoot most of this stuff from cameras really far away using long lenses, slowly tracking on dollies, and make it feel sort of, I don't know, it added a sort of granular verite, I don't know what sense of realism. And also the one angle back there would always be behind these bars, which, without being too obvious, said something about separation and menace, I guess.
Put it to you this way, I'm putting this whole fucking town in my rear view.
And meanwhile, on the other side, the cars going by, it just felt like most everyday kind of urban, mundane location.
Oh.
Come on.
Are you serious, Jimmy? She's not my kid. Cut it out. All you give a fuck about is Coke and Xbox. Now you're trying to play it off like you care about Shine? Come on now.
Yeah,
Coke and Xbox was another suggestion for a title.
Mr. Fucking Clean, Mr. Fucking Goddamn Hide and Mighty. Right?
This conflict between the two of them, I thought was a very common idea, particularly in New England and Boston, this idea of like wanting to change, being mistaken for, thinking you're better than other people somehow, and that the way that, trying to change. So here now we go into handheld, the wider lenses closer when the scene intensifies.
Okay. She knew I knew I'm not the father, and I...
The idea that you want to do something better with your life it can often be looked at by others who are around you as, an implied indictment of what they're doing with their life.
Mattapan to find out who the father of that kid is. I don't know who the fuck you think you are, either. You aren't letting me or not letting me do shit. All right, here's a little fucking cheat sheet for you. It's never gonna be me and you and your sister and Shine fucking playing house up there. All right? You got it? Get that in your fucking head. I'm tired of your one-way fucking bullshit. If you want to see me again, come down and visit me in Florida. Go.
And I wanted this to just be like kind of a hockey fight, like not the stunt guy blocked out like this whole like fight with flips and kicks, and I was like, no, it's just like a hockey fight. It's just kind of grab-assing and slugging on each other, and then he takes the gun and gets the upper hand by pistol whipping, and it's not the Bourne Identity. It's just like a real fight. It's so sloppy and actually Bourne Identity is quite real, but for what they're doing. But these guys are just street guys, and they get in a fight that's just about grabbing and mauling one another.
In the 302, feds have me dropping Brennan right here.
That's orthochrome, that stock, which is a really slow black and white stock. It used to be like for titles in the 20s, and it looks great, but you have to have a huge amount of light. So it was like an 18K next to Jeremy while he was shooting that gun, just to get an exposure. I know. On the one hand, I felt like maybe it was a little film school to have those black and white flashbacks, but by the same token, I just love that orthochrome. So I went for it, just sort of trusting my instincts, figuring, you're gonna get hit for something. Might as well be for something you like.
Didn't ask you to do that.
Yeah, well, you didn't have to, Dougie. Come on. They told me Brendan Leahy was coming down here to roll up on you with a Glock 21, so I came over here, and I put him in the fucking ground. They're 9 years for it. Now, you don't gotta thank me, but you're not walking away.
I'm grateful for everything you've done for me. Your family took me in when my father went away. You're like a brother to me.
This is where you see the sort of humanity of the Jeremy character, his own, I believe that people, even like really ugly, vicious people, are largely created through, injuries they absorb themselves, and you see a little bit there, his sense of injury. Pete went and did his research as a florist and learned how to do all this rose cutting and stuff, and works to great effect. I mean, it wasn't that hard to learn. There's Dennis and his tattoo, which I wanted to feature. I mean, it couldn't be more. Is it the Irish colors, the state of Massachusetts, and the Charlestown zip code on the tattoo? I mean, what else do you want? What else do you need?
I wouldn't hire you without them. You're a unit.
Look, that phrase, "you're a unit," is more of an IRA phrase. It felt like from the IRA.
Work it out however you can. Calm down. Okay? Goes against my better judgment, but...
Yeah, Pete sat down with this florist and figured out how to do this stuff, and then wanted to have his cigarette kind of burning there in the ashtray. And it's just one of those times when an actor makes you look really good as a director.
You're gonna do what I ask.
And these reflections behind him were a nightmare. Like, he couldn't move, the boom couldn't be anywhere. The off-camera actor had to be in a certain place, but it looks great.
You guys run numbers and pump dope. You're an old guy with a fucked up face who don't know his glory years are behind him. I ain't fucking working for you. Got it? You got a problem with that? I live at 551 Bunker Hill Street. Stop by any time. You know where to find me.
You're gonna do this for me? I'm gonna clip your nuts. Like I clip your daddy's.
Again, this kind of come back to the father story here, and being at the root of what drives him and what haunts him.
Then he wanted his own thing. Play the horses. They either geld a horse with a knife.
This is geld a horse with a knife for the chemicals. I'm not sure that's at all true. I just made that up, and no one ever told me that wasn't the case. So I don't know if they ever actually use a knife to like surgically galled horses. I don't think that's the case, but
Hung herself with a wire on Melnea Cass.
Melnea Cass is a street in Roxbury. They used to have a lot of these like drug flop hotels on it. It doesn't anymore, but I like the way he said it. Melnea Cass.
She ain't in it.
And there was an additional line that said she was buried in a pauper's grave with no name on it, and Pete was like, "No, that's too much." I was like, "Okay, well, cut it out." Sometimes good actors can also help you edit your writing.
Arrangement to your house, but I will if I have to. Now I know where to find you. Claire. Claire.
Initially, I had it be that I was like really nervous and I'd taken my gun out to come in and make sure she was okay. But then I cut out scenes where you understood that. You can see me putting the gun away right there. And so it didn't make sense really to be doing that. It felt awkward. So I was just lucky and I could just use some of the tighter shots where you didn't see the gun.
Who talked to you?
I like the idea that he says like, who talked to you? It could have been law enforcement or it could have been Fergie. Either way, the good guys and the bad guys were both closing in on him, and he was in this terrible position where he could be, he was kind of between a rock and a hard place, and he had no one left, and then they got to her, and that was sort of the end of it for him. When she stands up, there's a little jump cut in there. It's the only one in the movie, but I thought I don't know, some people thought it looked like too much like a horror movie, but I thought it just helped give her some animation and some jump and some anger.
You have to fuck him too.
Listen to me, calm down.
No. Get out.
This was the last scene we shot in the movie, the last day. Rebecca was great. She was dreading it. She knew it was coming. She had to like go through this rigmarole, and she did it, and I thought she was fabulous. The trans light behind me, out the way, this is on a stage, and look how fake that is. Isn't that horrendous? See that trans light right there? It just killed me. But for various reasons, they're too boring to go into. That was one we were stuck with. Here, Doug, in the original version, Doug had a much stronger reaction to this, and ultimately goes in here, buys drugs from this guy, and relapses. And I really liked it. I mean, initially, I thought it really worked for me. That train is really there in Boston, by the way. It's not a set or anything. And with all that painting, the graffiti. Anyway. And he's crushing up the Oxycontin and snorting it, and the problem was that people seemed to be, it engendered some really strong reactions, and mostly it's that people it was sort of distracting because people kept waiting for the other shoe to drop or to say like, oh, well, when's he going to use again, or does he have pills on him, or does he, because they're very conditioned to this idea that like this relapse would lead naturally into a calamity. So the idea of just like he relapses once and then gets his act together, it didn't land, and worse than not landing, it did the worst thing you can do, which is confuse the audience, and so I took it out, even though there's a lot about it thematically that I really liked. It ties in with, and it gives you some space before he comes back and sees this wreath, and it allows you to breathe and kind of go, oh, I see, he's kind of walking it off and coming down and thinking about talking to her again, and then he discovers this. This is a scene that was in the book, was in the original thing, where he comes back to Krista to have her be the intermediary to tell Jem. And it also cemented how Krista knew, or in fact that she knew, to the audience. We got to see her apartment and her life and Shine, her daughter. And that Doug kind of went to her for something, for food, that she had like kind of taken care of him at times in the past, not unlike his mother. There was a lot of things to recommend this dramatically. But again, it just turned out that this was a period of time in the movie where we needed to be moving forward. That this felt like a sort of a lateral move. A little more character detail, but not propelling the story. And this is a scene that I had in, I took out and in and out, and really, I realized it had to be in the movie because it's what starts the third act. It's where the protagonist takes action and becomes his true self, in effect. And then I was embarrassed that I ever had it out. I like that he gets threatened and he has that smile. It's not like a goofy movie smile, but he seems genuinely not concerned, like he's won. A man comes in and threatens his life and he smiles at him like he beat him. I mean, it's It's a great choice.
I just want to talk to you, just for 2 minutes.
The time we shot this scene was, getting to be winter. As you can see, there's empty trees behind her, and the production designer was having to plant these flowers in the ground. They would die in an hour and a half. So we had to shoot the scene really quickly, and it was freezing cold.
Listen to me for a second, all right?
You can see it was like cold. It starts to constrict the skin. You can see on both of our faces.
Ask me anything you want. I'll tell you the truth.
Why? I won't believe you.
Yes, you will.
Why?
Because you'll fucking hate me.
There's a lot of light mismatches too. This whole truth or dare idea, I thought was sort of a way of like trying to, it's this idea of like almost like a guy who's had an affair and wants to, regain his wife's trust and says, okay, I'm going to tell you everything. In this case, obviously, he's done something worse, but but still, I thought this idea of laying himself out there to say, I'll tell you anything you want to know, would be the only way that she might give him like a tiny bit of credibility going forward. Of course, she's not really. She's ready to convict him until he changed her mind at the last minute. Having those little kids go by, I always hated scenes that end like I have to walk away because the scene's over for no reason. And so, because the game was there, I had all those kids come by and kind of disrupt the scene and motivate the exit. Harry Gregson Williams put these little guitar beats in right before the scene. I really love. They sort of add to the mood and tone. I've been a hard time scoring this part of the movie. Again, he talks about their fathers, their fathers' faces. He's from an older generation. I'm trying to keep alive this same theme.
I have this.
Well, the gang's all here. There's always at
And
least
meanwhile, this scene is really trying to help the audience recognize that when John approaches Blake, that's because he's been smart about it and known where the right pressure point is to push. This is sort of trying to establish that, show plausibility of what they're doing, and also help give the audience a little bit of context when they get to the Fenway robbery.
$3.5 million.
$3.5 million is total bullshit. I think they would probably, and they pick up the money every day. I mean, there's some stretches about this. They don't wait 4 days. If they did wait 4 days, it might be $1.2 million or something. Here's where I really wanted to show my love for Fenway Park and, just how it looks at night and how sexy and exciting it is. And this was the first thing we shot, Jeremy and I. So pre-production day, just went up there with a Steadicam, and me and him. And then it was the same day they were doing I think they were doing the Jimmy Fun Telethon. So the same day we were doing this shooting, I went into the booth and talked to Don and Jerry. I think that's why they're wearing their orange uniforms. So this is really just an extended version of the scene, and it's just more dialogue, which is directly from the book. John talks about judging a punching contest, this whole joke about a hugging contest, a face punching contest, and a fucking contest. I think it lent him some edge, and I liked it because it was some build up to the scene and added to the flirtation at the beginning, and you saw a different side of him that was even rougher. But again, the scene got to be very long. The movie was, very long, and so I clipped that front piece and watched the scene again, and the effect was virtually the same. So ended up getting cut out, but those lucky few who have the Blu-ray can see John Hamm say "fucking contest" right here. And this bartender's face is spectacular. I mean, he's a magnificent man. I looked long and hard for him, and then we found him and put him in the movie.
What are you doing down here?
It also gave a bit more of a it does play better in one way, which is that by the time you get to this whole thing, if she says like, "What are you doing here slumming?" and they're flirting more, it's because they've had a longer, conversation before then, a sort of ice-breaking conversation. And so she says, "You gotta chase the rabbit." You kind of realize that it's because they've been flirting for a while, and that now that she's taking the subtext and making it textual. But again, it's one of those things where, I'd like to make a 4-hour movie, but I'd probably be the only person that wants to watch it.
Sand and gravel?
No.
Sand and gravel. I like how she says that because it's like, and she knows that's his kind of cover job, but she doesn't think she knows he doesn't go to work there, so she's made uncomfortable by the whole question.
How big would you say that is? 6 inches? Over or under?
Under.
Wrong. 6.14 inches exactly. I know everything there is.
We go into the original scene,
Thickness,
which is where John is really great. He's really convincing. I know everything there is to know about Moneyline. Makes me feel he's just unimpeachably the character. because he's got the mysteries of what the character knows inside him, and we don't know it, but he kind of commands it. And now here he tells her, she realizes what's happening, so I start to do this slight move, kind of in a 45-degree angle, almost coming into a straight profile.
You pick up a package at point A, deliver it to point B, the florist gives you...
And so I do a complimentary move on John, but really the move's about the impact that this is all having on her, landing on her, hitting her, like that sinking, horrible feeling in your gut, like she's tasting copper in the back of her mouth, and, you know, she feels the inside slipping away like melting ice and you know, reeling, but she's just sitting perfectly still. Blake's terrific in this scene.
I want a lawyer.
Good. Get one. I mean, it's all about protecting yourself, right? Not even yourself. Your daughter.
Don't talk about my daughter.
How long were you with McCrae?
All my life.
In all those years that you were together, how many diamond necklaces did he give you?
And now this,
All right, here's the deal.
this is wholly new from the theatrical cut. Here you see the Agent Quinlan from the FBI, also godmother of my children, bugging this Avericom van. This here's a guy named Bug Eyes from Charlestown. I don't need to say anything other than that. He's getting bribed by Dez. So all these things are meant to set up, should lend some ominous feel to
That's what I got.
the story. And this, and we cut back in. That's now become a preamble to the Gem story. And in this cut, I've added the whole 50-pound mule story, which I wrote and liked, and then watched and thought, this is a little much. But
Do me a favor.
I think it does. It speaks at its root to who Jem is and why he ends up where he ends up and why they all do. And just saying I don't want to go to prison is one thing, and then
Guys pretending they want to get out.
hearing a longer explanation about it or some form of expression from a person who feels that way helps you.
Call a guy a 50-pound horse.
50-pound horse? No.
All right. A guy's walking with two horses, right? One horse is
Hoped it
carrying 100
sort of
pounds.
made sense. I spent a lot of time with Jeremy going back and forth. No, the horse, the 50-pound horse. What he did? No, the 20. There's 100. There's two horses. One is 100. Why don't we just say?
50-pound horse, he won't move. He won't take one step with another pound on his back.
That's the only moment in this movie where I feel like Renner's thinking of his next line. Right?
This is all I know.
This is all I know. That was Jeremy's ad lib.
I can't do any more time, Dougie. So if we get jammed up, we'll hold him
I liked it. In the movie, I felt it was a little bit. They were saying the same thing twice, but for this, I wanted to include it because it's such a convincing moment as an actor.
Yo,
What's that?
start of the old timers town. It ain't a horse.
And Doug's got this like sort of wry rejoinder,
See ya.
which is meant to sort of feel like they're sort of on the same level, but always be on different, the same place, but always be in different
6
places.
a.m. according to the GPS we have on his truck. So we alerted you.
So now they've tracked the truck with the GPS.
Let's go pop the door, kick their fucking nuts in.
We should wait for them to commit a crime, don't you think? I mean, no switch car.
Q-hot is what they call it when they check for the license plates and see if anything the cars are stolen. I don't know why, but Q-hot.
Call SWAT now.
So we have 3 brands of an armored truck, and one is repeated, and this is the Atlantic one we used twice. That's Tom Devlin. He's our FBI advisor right there. There's Bug Eyes, Charlestown character. And that stuff was meant to kind of establish how the guys got around the FBI. People feeling like, oh, wouldn't they be following them? In actual point of fact, they wouldn't really be that dialed in on them because they can't surveil them constantly. But it felt like maybe it made movie sense, and so we shot it, and ultimately I felt like I didn't need it.
Not a great time, hon.
This is a bad mismatch on my face with the beard. I was just dismissive kind of continuity stuff, and I viewed it as just a distraction. And then I was really sorry when my beard was a little too long here, and then the next time you see me, it's short. Hopefully people weren't paying too much attention.
Keep bringing the kid in here. You got it? You can't stay.
I don't want to stay. I want to go with you.
This scene we did in the first take we did it, the child started crying as when this argument picks up. And basically that's all I used. It was everything from that point on, because it struck me as it was just so powerful having this, like a little child crying as counterpoint to this adult argument. It reminded me of a scene in Narc with Jason Patrick and the one playing his wife, and they're holding this crying baby, and it was always so unsettling, Once I had my own kids, I realized that kids crying isn't actually all that uncommon, but he tried to minimize it.
What did you say? Where did you hear that? Where did you hear about a necklace?
It comes right at the right place where she kicks the thing because she's angry, and then there's a few beats, and then I slam her against the wall, and now the child started crying. And it changed her performance and mine. I look back, but I don't look back right away, which I probably would have done if I was doing it on a cue. You know, I wouldn't have delayed it. I wouldn't have been that real. And after she started crying, I didn't want to put her in that situation anymore, so we just stopped using the child. She really was crying because she wanted to see her mother, but we had it. We had this, which somehow made the whole scene work for me. Like this child, she was neglecting this kid, and this was just, you know, it was like her past coming with her, and it was like, spoke to this theme of parents and children. I was just trying to layer that in.
Hey, will you quit fucking doing that? You're making me nervous.
Again, here you see a bunch of kids outside the school. It was freezing. It was snowing this day, literally snowing. And those kids were like, oh, these little towny kids. I was like, all right, you guys got to take off your parkas for 5 seconds while we're going to turn the cameras on. And they were great. They were up to it. They did it. And that guy, Danny Woods, the cop, is a real guy from Charlestown and not a cop. Surprised he was ever going to be allowed to put a cop uniform on in his life. He got a big kick out of it, and so did the people who know Danny. These glasses, you know, I always went back and forth on if it was two Village people but because they look because of the non-reflective kind, they look a little more costumey, but I figured that, you know, they were basically wearing costumes, so I went with it. It just seemed like they would not let themselves go without sunglasses, and the other glasses looked too off. This guy, he just looked like some giant, you know, like old, you know, Indian chief or something, and I loved his attitude. And this is all one shot coming from the front of the place down through here. You go down this door, and now all of a sudden we're in the we can actually see the field, and a door opened to the field, and we realize that we're back with the grounds crew in an area that's kind of forbidden. And I wanted to do that as a way of, you know, telling the audience right off the bat, okay, these guys have kind of come in through the outdoor, and and you see all the fertilizer and stuff, that they're in a way that most people can't get in. Or in a place, rather. This is all real. This is a real tunnel that really exists in the corner of this office, which is the head groundskeeper's office.
And remember, you never fucking saw me. Okay.
I like that guy's defiance about how he's going to bully us into not telling on him. That's also kind of plausible. Like, before games, when the Red Sox aren't playing, security's not that tight. You know, they have some guys sitting at tables and that kind of thing. But if you were dressed like the ambulance driver and you knew there was an ambulance there for the game, it's perfectly reasonable that you could get in. And again, I loved trying to keep as much stuff I could from the book of how these guys, sort of that's how they gained access, was just by knowing the routine and being kind of working guys who knew the deal, could get in the back door.
Sweetheart, I know you have oxycodone, cocaine, and alcohol in your system. I know that you have 5 cars registered in your name, and I know right now your daughter is sitting in the back of a state van being driven by a stranger to the Department of Social Services. So how long do you want to do this?
I'm a person, you know?
Yeah, you're a person who's going to need a plea agreement if you ever want to see your kid again.
Why is it always I'm the one who's getting used?
What do you have?
In the hands of other actors, this scene could have easily been a bit more, you know, something you've seen before, but I felt like both of them were so real and so distinct, and you could so feel their kind of individual agendas, that it worked better. Like when John says, this could be a really big...
I need you to be smart here. This could be a big moment for Shine.
It's a big moment for Shine. It has this like faux compassion. And place about the child, I thought it was something about that aspect of the performance, how he kind of widens his eyes and tries to lure her into thinking that he cares about her daughter all of a sudden. Just felt smart on his part. And Blake was great. You just did that breakdown many, many times. 1912, that's not real. We put that in there, but I just, knowing, you know, when the ballpark was built and liking the integrity of that, I wanted that in there. This is the real breaker room for all the lights and all the, like, you know, like power for 10 blocks around. So they were like, don't touch the walls. So we didn't. And there was like, I think they told us, like, just, you know, only bring the geniuses in here. Which I guess meant, like, you know, don't bring anyone who's going to stick jumper cables on the walls and connect to something else. That's the real communications room at Fenway Park. We used a lot of their stuff. The only stuff we didn't use was their real security apparatus or security room, which obviously, or cash room, they weren't interested in letting us use. And actually, we needed to build it anyway to be able to shoot it properly.
Okay, go ahead.
Who called 911? You guys that called 911?
No one from here called.
No, we didn't. It wasn't us.
We got a
So this is a stage, so we did all this stuff on the stage. And I like, this is from the book, this idea of the guy, they just kind of try to bogart their way in by saying they're responding to a robbery call, which is something as simple and obvious as you could imagine, but also, you know, kind of effective. And I also wanted to make it so that it didn't quite work. The guys got like suspicious of him, even though the guy's kind of an old guard who's never taken his gun out, and he's kind of mouths off to us about the glasses, you know, the village people glasses.
Been here all morning. Take it easy.
My partner asked for your ID. All right, we don't know you.
And so now we're this bit of a standoff where I'm trying to suggest that I need to get everyone on the ground to see their IDs. It's maybe a bridge too far. And so it goes sideways, and then it just becomes a kind of a who's got more balls contest, and these guys just decide, forget it. It's not worth it.
Hands behind your back. Face down. Behind your back. Come on.
But all these actors in the scene, all four of them in this little crew, one is the guy picking up the money, one's a security guy for Fenway, one's a security guy for the company, are all great. They really were just real and detailed, and it was a longer scene than this when we shot it, and they were really, really good at it. And I think good in the one that you see here.
Cash room. Arnold Washington, you live at 311 Hayes Street in Quincy with a wife named Linda and 3 small dogs. Do not make a distress call. Also in the cash room, Morton Previtt. You live at 27 Counting Lane.
This was originally in the movie theater robbery in the middle of the book. This idea, and I loved it. I love the idea of the guys knowing, just finding out people's backstory, who work there. Something as simple as that, and then holding that over their heads would be really effective. Somebody just told you they knew where they had a gun, they said they knew where you lived, they knew what your wife's name was, and they have people outside the house. You'd do whatever they said. And it doesn't need to be shape charges and, you know, levitating off the floor. Not that I don't like movies where there's shape charges and levitating off the floor.
You think you're gonna get out of here? I got friends in the guys at Walpole. They'll make your lives rip ass hell.
Don't you worry about it, old timer. No one's going to prison.
There was a lot of debate over where to stick those tied up guys because, you know, if they were out in the middle where they were originally, the idea was they could be seen through that door. And we stuck them over there. And here's a cheat because they went from that shot to the actual Fenway Park here, where we built a faux door just to emerge from. Got us from the stage back to the park. And here I just had to hope that, you know, tension would be built by the information that we've already established and just seeing them move through this space. I took the glasses off thinking they would be too suspicious, and we shot it, you know, as you can see, long lens, wide shots, Steadicam, tracking shots, Gator Steadicam stuff. That's the Gator there. And I wanted to use a bunch of different cuts to, you know, communicate a kind of nervous furtiveness. And this is Gate D. We remodeled it slightly at Fenway Park. We added a wall. We changed one of the exit doors. But it is, in fact, Fenway Park. We just had to do some building A because we were going to break some stuff, so we couldn't break the real stuff. We had to break our fake stuff. And also so that the geography of getting the armored car out and the ambulance out and where, you know, our relationship to the police would all work.
Last motherfucker who robbed the Red Sox like this was Jack Clark.
This is this idea that he's just nervous at something, you know, the old "it's too quiet" thing. Just all of a sudden realizes that all that activity saw, the steamers, the kegerators, all that stuff, now it's all gone. You hear a few sounds, and what's interesting about the sounds is that there's just like one of them or two of them, and then, you know, that's all of a sudden going away. Something must be wrong. And of course it's because the FBI is pulling everybody out of the park. And I wanted to have these guys like not really looking around because they're sort of down the street from where the main action is. So I liked that they weren't like aiming their guns. They were just standing there sort of in support capacity for the thing, but they weren't quite sure what was happening, you know. And let's get this idea that nobody really knows what one hand doesn't know what the other hand's doing, particularly in law enforcement, and there's a lot of sort of bureaucracy and mixed messages, which pops up later. By establishing that now, I think it makes it more credible. And this sound mix was really, we worked on it a lot. When we were there and we were shooting down underneath in Fenway Park and you were on the street, it sounded like this low, distant thunder. And so I really wanted to try to capture that sound. This is, again, I just tried to make this as sort of real as possible, motivating every shot, every duck, every move, and try to individuate it, you know, so it's not just a haze of bullets, but rather everything's got a purpose. It's tricky. We had so many issues with our practical effects that most of the stuff is actually digital bullet holes and stuff.
You all right? You all right? Okay, it's got the vest. No, Des, get the plunger.
I was wondering if the audiences would know what a plunger was. It seems like an expression unique to Boston, but nobody asked questions at the early screening, so I guess we got away with it. This thing we had to tie to a rail because it was so the gap was so narrow between the edge of the armed truck and the sides that it had to get put on rails to get out, and so it went, you know, literally 3 miles an hour coming out. We had to speed it up and cut back and forth, and there you go. And this day I felt like I was doing, you know, a real action movie. I got to do a movie where a truck slammed down on other trucks. It was like our biggest day, and it was like, you know, an off day on Transformers or something.
They look like EMTs.
I count 4. Maybe 1 down.
Go.
So this is a little piece where Doug tries to convince Dez to turn himself in because he thinks they're all going to get killed, and he knows that Dez wouldn't do as much time as the rest of them. And I liked it, and I liked that it kind of fleshed out Dez, and but it seemed too convenient that it happened where it did, which is kind of right before he got killed, as if, you know, magically, you know, it just was too easy in a way. Like, oh, I'm going to try to let you escape, and then right the next second he gets killed. It was just, I didn't put it in the right place, and so it didn't work. These flashbang grenades are real, and we kind of researched them. It's hard to communicate tremendous loudness and tremendous brightness because brightness just blows out and looks like white, and the noise, you can only make it so loud. So even this, you know, tinnitus sort of ringing in the ears, as an effort to try to communicate how sort of deafening and disorienting they are. And I wanted to have a thing where you heard the bullet go into the metal of the ambulance louder than even it like kind of hitting him or going through him or anything. That the shot goes off and then you hear it ding into the ambulance before you realize that it's in between those stops. It's gone through one of our characters. That 7.62 rounds are the fired up by like AK-47s and will actually chew up some of those shields. Maybe not quite as much as that, but we had a hard time getting it to break in a small way that was visible. So that was the best that we got.
They ain't looking for fucking cops. I'm gonna roll out the front. The 2 of you beat it out the side in the fucking cop uniforms. The whole fucking force is out there. You know I can take a pinch. Don't worry about it. Only give me a first name.
I love the laugh he gives in that first name thing. It's like, rather than any kind of maudlin stuff, he kind of enjoys it. But it's still real. It doesn't feel like a glib bullshit line to me. Initially, I wanted to have like all the people that outside not sure whether to shoot or not because it's an ambulance and an emergency vehicle, and it was just not enough time, and it didn't really work. The inside of that camper was totally empty, and we took the engine out of the ambulance so that they would have more of an impact.
Move, move.
Here's the site where I wanted this idea to pay off of the two branches of law enforcement kind of getting in one another's way, and their rivalry, which was more real than I would have imagined when I researched it, kind of gumming up the works. So they spend time in a pissing contest down there and allows these two guys time to get away. And the fact that they're dressed as BPD gives them even more cover.
Got this. Hey, you BPD need to fuck off. What are you doing? It's an FBI crime scene. Put your fucking hand up to me. Go.
Jurisdiction, guys. Walk away.
It's my kill. I don't know if we're dealing with some high level of fucking genius.
This guy's a real cop. High level of fucking genius with security. cops. And it's just outstanding. I don't know if you need me on the commentary. I sit there and do all the other lines, but I thought he was really great. You know, I did one of the rare hood mounts for this next shot here, just because I liked the way the reflection kind of moved off the glass. It gave a sense of, I don't know, pursuit, and like the hunter. You know, you see he's still, but you see the world going past him. Mostly I did just more handheld inside the car, that kind of stuff, so it felt real, and you didn't get a sense that the camera could be somewhere a human couldn't be. So now I'd make this decision, like, am I going to try to help him or take off on my own? Ultimately proves to be irrelevant.
South toward Boylston, hotel parking lot on Van Ness.
And this sequence is my favorite of the action aspects of it, because I think it's different and it's as realistic as I could make it. You know, it's after Jeremy shoots at John Ramirez on the street. Have this like running shot where you have a sense of his adrenaline and panic, and then you see it from the helicopter, which is the same as seeing the security cameras in the first robbery. Like, you know, this is the way we're used to seeing, you know, robberies and shootouts and escapes. So here you hear like he's like sweaty and panicked and freaking out, and then you see it from the top, and now it's just, you know, chaos. And he sees the first police car pull up, and he's going to hold court on the street, and so he does. And we made sure to do the, you know, reload at the times where he would need to reload. And Jeremy just had such balls with all these cars going by and running right across the street. It was amazing. And the drivers were incredible. I mean, they did the exact same thing, exact same stops, exact same speed every time. All I did was just set up a bunch of cameras. This is where I think Renner looks like Cagney a little bit to me, like that kind of Angels with Dirty Faces thing.
Turn on your weapon.
He used the shot of that when there was smoke from the squib, and I liked how it looked. It's not exactly real, but that was neat.
You got 30 seconds, asshole!
I like the idea that, you know, who he gets killed by is the realistic version, which is the trained FBI SWAT team guys who would instantly be able to shoot him right in the head if he came up and cleared himself in that way, and they had a clear shot from across the way. And this, taking a drink, is from a video I saw on YouTube of a guy who, when I was looking for gunshot stuff for realism, a guy who actually takes a drink of water before he kills himself.
Okay.
And apparently adrenaline makes you really thirsty.
I surrender!
Yeah, so there's no shootout, there's no drama. There's just, he turns the corner and they kill him right away. And it's really, I want it to be ugly and not sexy and not cool, and just it shatters his jaw swells up. It goes through his temple. Like, he's just killed, and it's nothing except an ugly, brutal end to this life. And that nick on John's neck is from a little chip of paint that went off and a bullet hit and cut him in the neck. Looks like he's got a zit for half the movie on his neck. Let me go back to our aerial news shot after this. Again, trying to sort of cement this feeling of realism. So in this version, I used the same security camera monitor effects with the Fergie shooting that I did in the opening robbery. The idea was, as you can see, that Fergie had security cameras in his place. Ultimately, it didn't quite work because we don't assume that somebody has those kind of monitors. You know, in banks, we know they do. We know exactly what it is. But here, I think it just seemed sort of disconcerting. I really was on the fence about it, and sometimes I thought, well, maybe this works, and maybe it doesn't. Here's one, and there's the other. And I liked framing myself all the way out, but ultimately, I opted not to use it. There's the nut clipping, as someone on the set called it.
Clipping, that's for you. I came in hot.
This is a real police officer, and I told the guys to roll, and I'm standing just off camera right, and we're rehearsing it. So I told the camera to just shoot it and record it, because he was so much better.
Bobby, what happened?
Somebody got Fergie.
Jesus Christ, that's gotta be McCrae.
This is a jury-rigged spot somewhere in Boston where I just put a hole in the wall and a chain-link fence and tried to make it look like a stash house.
I want to meet you.
soon. I don't have a lot of time. Can you meet me? Yeah, please.
This is tricky. I'm trying to know when to do the reveal that the cops were with Claire, how to do in that wide shot or the tight shot, and when to tell the audience that Doug was across the street. It took a lot of experimenting with. We have some shots of her in the window that are from his point of view, some that are more dead on. Obviously, we use her coverage from inside.
What if there are police there?
See, that's more of a flat one, just reveal the cops. I had that in, took it out, and put it back in. It gets a bit of a laugh, and I always thought, well, maybe people shouldn't be laughing right at that point. But then it sort of started feeling like a bit more of a release or something than laughter. So I left it in.
Claire, listen to me.
We also had to mix the sound right out of that cell phone, so you understood that John was leaning over and listening to the phone through her ear, and not just trying to nuzzle her or something.
Remember that. Come down to the back and let me in about an hour.
All right. I'll see.
Doug?
Yeah.
I want you to come. I really want to see you.
You like the head-on shots because her breath misted the glass. You can see it sort of moving around a cherry picker, and it was on tight lines. It was hard to get to be totally still. And the Sunny Days line, I just hoped that people would remember. Originally, when I wrote it, I thought, gosh, we're going to have to do some kind of cheap flashback or something. But people got it. I also scored the movie and put this sort of like goes to upbeat and, uplifting on that line, so it helps kind of communicate, if you don't remember right away, that this is a good turn,
All right, I'd say we've done our part here, huh?
You know what? Not now.
It's her lawyer that she got that John told her she needed. Yeah, some people haven't known that was my uncle, the bus driver. Some people told me, oh, well, I didn't get that. So that's what that is, if you didn't get it, is that I'm leaving some money behind for my uncle, the bus driver, whose apartment I was in that could see straight into her apartment.
Sir, we need you to stay off the street. It's going to work. No problem.
How long? 40 minutes. Alleyway clear?
Yes, sir.
Got nothing. Still no movement in the alley. Over.
Well, I guess he didn't have as big a thing for you as you thought.
I guess not.
My sunny days. Claire, we are a national organization. All right, boys, let's pack it up. He ain't coming. Let's get the description out.
Let's go.
We know what he looks like. Let's go find him.
All right, you good? Hey, best possible outcome, Well done.
That was his ad, the best possible outcome. And it was so odd and inappropriate that I thought it was great. That's what redeems John's character. Right there. That's he's not to be one to be humiliated or even defeated. The whole it's a national organization, and the idea is that's the kid that goes by on the bike that I believe put the note on the car, is that he's not he's gonna get him. He's gonna get caught. He's gonna catch him eventually. He's just kind of delaying it. And it's probably right.
Claire, take this. You'll do better with it than I can.
I've debated this vest parka thing because it suggested like a
Not the way I
time had passed, maybe more than it had. It's only supposed to be
I'm leaving this city.
a day or two. She looks like it's coming on winter. Also, the tangerine would not be so intact were it longer than a week or
Maybe
so.
if I go, I can stop looking.
That anonymous gift was important to suggest that, Claire herself didn't go up and say, here's some money, which, she would have been suspect, obviously, if she did, that it was left, submitted to them, or given to them anonymously in the name of Doris McRae, and so.
So I got a long road.
This is actually in coastal Georgia,
But I know I'll see you again.
Hampton Island, Georgia.
This side or the other.
And then this says it's not meant to be, peaceful or he's gotten away. It should be kind of lonely and ethereal, and this side or the other kind of conjuring up the memories of the price we have to pay and the debts we owe and the burdens we carry, and that maybe he's fated anyway to something ugly. But but he'll see her, as his father said, in this life or the next. His father was talking about in the prison or the next life. He hopes his life can be something other than a prison, though he knows he's got a long way to go. This is a song called Jolene by Ray LaMontagne that I always thought always moved me enormously, and I thought about it a lot when I was making this movie, and so put it in. I listened to some other tracks, even some from Ray, but this just I found the most moving. The cast was excellent. I want to thank them all. Robert Ellis, who shot the movie, did a great job. Sharon Seymour, production designer, was amazing. Dylan Tischner, who cut the movie, along with Chris Rouse, incredible. I benefited from extraordinary crew, as I said. Gary Himes, Alex Witt, so many, as I said, Colin Anderson, Steadicam operator. Great people. The producers all were excellent. Shay Carter. This was I really had the benefit of leaning on a lot of tremendously talented people, and I'm really, really grateful to them. There's all the rest of them I would name, but you can see their names as they scroll by here, and you can certainly assume that I am deeply grateful to all of them, as well as grateful to Charlestown. And I wanted to make clear by this card that I'm not suggesting that everybody in Charlestown was a bad person. Quite the opposite. Most people are wonderful people, and they had this issue they dealt with. And in fact, it's largely gone now. But that movie's dedicated to the people of Charlestown. And thanks very much for buying the disc and for listening to me, even in part. This movie was a lot of fun to make and a lot of work, but I hope you enjoy watching it.